Famed Hollywood producer Harvey Weinstein has been expelled from the movie academy after at least 6 women accused him of rape, but his case has ignited a cascade of sexual misconduct accusations spreading well beyond him. So how did Hollywood sweep this dirt secret under the carpet for so long? Earlier we talked to a panel, and we are going to bring you that discussion later. Welcome back. You're still watching World Insight with Tian Wei, coming to you Monday to Friday on CGTN. The Directors Guild of America has filed disciplinary charges against the movie producer Harvey Weinstein. The disgraced Hollywood movie maker has already been expelled from the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, the Producers Guild, and also the British Academy of Film and Television Arts following serious allegations of sexual misconduct. At least 6 women have publicly accused the 65-year-old of rape. Authorities in Los Angeles, London, and New York are investigating allegations against Weinstein. Weinstein, however, has denied all allegations of non-consensual sex. Talking about Harvey Weinstein's sexual harassment scandal, we are joined in Los Angeles by Melanie Ansley, producer and co-executive director of the China Hollywood Society. And in New York, we are having Roseann Lake, author of a forthcoming book about the social and economic brawn of China's trailblazing female urban elite left over in China, the women shaping the world's next superpower. I want to welcome both of you ladies to my program. It's wonderful to say, ladies, welcome. I want to start with, thank you so much. I want to start with you, Melanie. This is the tipping point, or not yet?
I think we're seeing a very strong tipping point because we've never seen such a well-known figure with so many allegations against him. So it'll be interesting to see where this goes. Certainly we've seen a lot of other people also getting caught up in the scandal.
High-profile allegations against some of the biggest names in movie industry by women, also biggest names in the movie industry. But Roseann, many wonder, what about the other women?
Well, coming forward to a case like this is obviously, it requires a large amount of courage. The things that these women have been through cause them to experience a great amount of shame. And, you know, announcing what they've experienced publicly is difficult. So certainly there are more in the woodwork. I mean, Harvey Weinstein has had a very long and prolific career, throughout the course of which he's encountered many beautiful women. And so I'm certain that there could be more cases that we've not heard about. It's good that we've had a few to get things started, and I'm sure as women feel more empowered to speak, they will continue to share stories.
On the social media, Melanie, there's so-called the Me Too campaign. Those women who have suffered from sexual harassment will come out and say Me Too, so that they demonstrate their courage. They also encourage their peers to come out as well and talk about it. But the thing is, what about what's going to happen to them later? I mean, are they going to be revenged in a way, quote unquote, by the industry or by some in the industry? It's still a big question mark. That is also one of the biggest concerns, Melanie.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that is what prevents people from coming forward, is we have this culture where, as Ashley Judd is saying, when she comes out against Weinstein, what happens is then the defense goes and reverses the victim and the perpetrator roles. So obviously all these women are very fearful of this happening. Now, I think with the Me Too campaign that you mentioned, one thing that has really drawn a lot of attention through that is just the sheer number of women. So I think that what we're seeing here is also a certain safety in numbers. If there's one person who comes out and makes these allegations, as we've seen in the past with Weinstein, it's easily suppressed, or there's payouts or buyouts or settlements. But whereas we've got a huge number of women saying that this has happened to them too, and that obviously is a tide that is much harder to stop.
It might help it to stop, but it's going to have, it has been really one of the ills of the industry for a long time. So Melanie, will this incident really help people and help the industry to clean up, or this is only going to be a sporadic case? What's going to happen still going to happen?
As I said, I don't think that we've seen something this big happen to a producer with so much stature and so much power. Now, there are arguments that, of course, that it's in a case where Weinstein has made a lot of enemies over his career. I think he's known for being very, very bullish. So it could be that there's also other factors that are involved. It's not just a purely sexual harassment case that's sticking to him, that there are other factors in the industry. But I think that we're also seeing other people getting swept up in this, Ben Affleck and other prominent people in the industry. So I don't think it's going away soon. I think that there at least are conversations about it. We are starting to talk about it very, very openly and you know, very thoroughly right now. So I think that's an encouraging sign. But obviously, things like this move in a way like a pendulum. So you have a lot of talk about this, and then it goes back. I mean, we have this in other industries as well, not just Hollywood, and you see it die down after a while.
Yeah, Roseann, the question is there any possibility for institutional build-up or awareness campaign that is going to continue for the longer term that would prevent, as much as possible, things like these from happening?
Well, absolutely. I mean, 23% of the Directors Guild of America, that's the percentage of women that you have. I mean, clearly women are underrepresented in Hollywood in positions of power. If you had, you know, more women in these roles, then maybe this would end. And it's not just Hollywood, as Melanie said. I mean, it's across many, many industries. This week in China, there was huge news, right? It was the 19th Party Congress. You had 7 men appointed to the Standing Committee, and 10 out of 204 members are women on the Central Committee. I mean, this isn't just Hollywood, it's politics, it's any sort of business, anywhere where you have money and power sort of conglomerating in an area and sort of men dominating, for better or for worse, you end up in situations like this. So hopefully it will raise awareness. I agree that it kind of swings like a pendulum. This has been around forever. We know that it's something that is very tightly linked to economic empowerment, right? Why does this happen? There's a fantastic piece in The Atlantic written by the actress Britt Marling. It just came out this week. She was writing about, you know, when she had her encounter with Harvey Weinstein in a hotel room, and he was trying to make advances on her and touching her shoulders, she was able to walk out because she's not just an actress, she's also a writer. She's a creator and a storyteller. And she understood that because she is a writer and a storyteller, she wouldn't be completely ruined, so her life wouldn't be over if she couldn't be an actress anymore. She had something else to fall back on. And the trouble is, when you're in those dire economic straits, you're more prone to being in situations like this. With greater representation and a bit more economic equality, I think you can take steps to
But that is an interesting question, isn't it? I mean, that's a question mark, in fact. Will more women in the industry necessarily going to help these things from happening, prevent them from happening? That's a big question mark. Jane Fonda, for example, in some previous interviews, admitted that she herself knew cases like this much earlier, and she didn't come out or even talk about it. She, of course, regretted that. But that has been there for a long time, and you have women well known in the industry that could have bigger power to help other women. So the thing is gender equity really going to help us, I mean the representation of gender equity, help us prevent the sexual harassment toward women in certain industry from happening? That's a big question mark. Melanie.
But I think as to Roseann's point, I think that the representation, if there's equal representation, then first of all, it perhaps minimalizes the opportunities for this happening. Also, more people will speak out, because obviously if you're underrepresented and you don't, and feel that you can't speak out, or that there's consequences to speaking out, then you won't. So I think when you have more peers around you, I think that creates a very different dynamic, as well as a different environment in which these conversations, first of all, can happen, do happen, where you will be listened to, and where possibly there's less motive to actually, you know, make these moves, or there's a little more caution amongst people like Weinstein to be doing what they're doing.
It has been a long talked about and debated about topic, that is whether women are really going to help women when there are issues that only women could help. Roseann, what is your thought?
I mean, it couldn't hurt, right? It's not necessarily true that it will solve everything. I doubt that's the case. In fact, speaking of Hollywood, there was a film made about that. It's called Mean Girls, right? Women aren't always necessarily kind to women. Sometimes when you know, the opportunity presents itself for them to advance their careers or not to harm them by speaking out against somebody, you know, who is in a position to help them, they're not going to do it. There's no panacea to this. But it certainly can't hurt to have more representation. I mean, if you have more female directors, then maybe you're not going up to the hotel room of Harvey Weinstein, you're going up to the hotel room of Helen Weinstein. And, you know, there's absolutely no promise that the same thing is going to happen, but it's probably a bit less likely.
Right.
And who am I to say that, you know, I just think it couldn't hurt. That's the bottom line.
But you know, we are talking about only Hollywood. Actually, things like that is not limited to Hollywood, as both of you mentioned. It could also happen to women of other race, and also it could happen to women of other cultures as well, in different fields and kinds of work. This could be a widespread issue for women around the world. The question is, how come after still so many years, the feminist movement back in the 1960s from the West, here in China you also have women being half of the sky. You have others in different parts of the world helping to have gender equity. Why things like this are still so rampant and so much causing concern even today? I think that is a big question. Melanie, your thought here.
Well, I think that things like this and change like this is very, very slow. We don't just see this with sexual harassment. We see it across all sorts of social justice in terms of equal rights amongst races, amongst gender, amongst sexuality. So it's a very, very slow change. And also you see cycles where I think that it comes into the spotlight and then things change a little bit, or you know, people institute new institutions or practices, and then maybe it gets hidden or it goes under the surface, and then it comes back later in perhaps a different form or in a different way and comes back to the surface. And so it's not a one-time thing. I don't think that you know, overnight we're going to see this this entire change where we wipe out bias or sexual harassment. So it's this slow process. And also remember that across different countries, every country has a different culture and different set of obstacles that they're facing. Right. And also how they view gender equality, right? So gender equality here is not the same as what it would be, let's say, in Africa or in China. So there's also that discussion that needs to happen as well.
Right. There needs to be a lot of discussions about gender equity, certainly, in so many different parts of the world, in different cases. One of the things, Roseann, I do want to ask you, because you are talking about so-called leftover women in your new book. Of course, you use that as very much in an irony way, because you're against the so-called leftover women. That phrase itself is discriminating to what women who are single and not married in their late 20s, 30s, and probably even 40s. But that is a rising social phenomenon you see here in China. Sometimes people use it just jokingly without understanding the undertone of this phrase and what would it mean in the longer term. Roseann, what do you make of this? I mean, not just leftover women, but also so-called iron women, the mean women in the office who are very strong and certainly capable. All of these phrases are toward women, but not necessarily toward men with the same quality or issues.
Well, I mean, it is said with irony, right? Because these women, they're called leftover women, but I don't see them as being leftover at all. I see them actually as agents of very important change that's going to be happening in China. And a lot of them are only daughters, not all of them, but many of them are only daughters that were born in urban areas during the peak years of the one-child policy. So they grew up without brothers, and they got access to resources that women in previous generations never got. And I see them as a very important generation that's going to be able to carry China forward, because they're very well educated and they're professionally ambitious. And the whole issue, I mean, I think that what is sort of the very rickety planks that this whole issue of sexual harassment is lying on is economic empowerment. I mean, one of the countries that consistently ranks the highest on indices of gender parity is Iceland. I don't think it's a coincidence that it's the first country in the world to have required equal pay for men and women. I mean, yes, to Melanie's point, these things do take a long time to change, but ultimately they probably shouldn't take that long, and they're about economics. And I think China is particularly well positioned to be able to change these things because it just came out this week, and it's been the case for a very long time. China has the greatest percentage of self-made female billionaires in the world.
Right.
A large part of that is the unique conditions under which they grew up, and of course that's not the reality for all women in China, but there is something to be said. I mean, of course, these issues of sexual harassment and gender inequality are just as rampant in China as they are in the United States.
That's right.
But that economic component that women are getting certainly is helping. And I think the more money and sort of the more power and...
But you know, one of the things is that there has been some pendulum change, I think. Earlier in the 1960s, you got pretty much a social and political movement of so-called feminist movement in the West, let's just say in the United States, Melanie. And in China, you also got the political movement at the very founding of the People's Republic of China, so-called women holding half of the sky, because women are the voters and women are the builders of the society. But now we are going to a very different stage that, like Roseann was arguing, it's about economic empowerment. It's about economic equity that we are talking about. The thing is, Melanie, will this eventually fundamentally change the picture? Is that really the core of the issue? I don't know. I don't know whether you know it.
Well, will economic stability and parity completely change it? I think that it's one factor. It's definitely a major factor. I think, as Roseann says, how can you be equal or have equal say when you don't have equal pay for the same job? I think that's something that is very important to address. That said, though, sexual harassment, do you only sexually harass people that have less pay than you do? I don't think that's true either necessarily. It's just a different. It's also about a cultural, a cultural bias that people have that's much more deep-rooted, and that's a conversation that's much deeper. That's about education, and that's about attitudes. That's about our views of gender equality and the other gender and how we treat them.
From you, Roseann, what do you think is the key to both the sexual harassment case that we're talking about in this specific case of Weinstein and some of the other issues we mentioned, gender equity? What is really the key here?
Education, making sure that the right values are instilled in children from a young age so that they understand that certain things are wrong. And also just, if we're talking more specifically about Hollywood, realizing that Hollywood is an important cultural export and sort of requiring, as a consumer audience, films that portray the way we'd like to be living in our world.
Right. Well, we have to wrap up today's discussion, but you know what, ladies? I'm sure that discussion will continue for the future, and we need to have it that way. Thank you so much, Melanie Ansley, Roseann Lake. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much, ladies, for being with us. And that is all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more, try to find us, World Insight CGTN, in your search engine, or check out our YouTube channel. You can also follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Weibo. From me, Tian Wei, and everyone on the World Insight team, thanks for watching, and tune in again next time for insights across China and around the world. Good night.